It was a quiet evening in Los Angeles. The sun had just set, casting a golden glow over the city as people rushed about their daily lives. The streets were alive with the hum of conversations, the occasional honk of a taxi, and the distant sound of street musicians playing their hearts out. In a small, dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town, Keanu Reeves sat alone at a corner booth, quietly enjoying a cup of coffee. He was dressed simply, as always, a black t-shirt and a worn-out leather jacket. Few people recognized him, and that was just the way he liked it. As he sipped his coffee, he noticed a young waitress in her early 20s looking stressed. Her movements were hurried, her face filled with exhaustion. Keanu could hear snippets of her conversation with a coworker. "I just don't know how I'm going to afford my tuition this semester," she said, her voice laced with worry. Her coworker, an older woman with kind eyes, gave her a sympathetic look. "You'll figure something out, Emma. You always do." But Keanu could hear the doubt in Emma's sigh. Keanu took a deep breath. He had always believed in quiet acts of kindness. Without drawing attention, he signaled the diner owner over and whispered something to him. The owner's eyes widened. Then he nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. Minutes later, as the young waitress cleared a table near him, the owner walked up and handed her an envelope. "A customer wanted to help," he said simply. The waitress hesitated before opening it, her hands trembling. Inside was a check covering her tuition fees in full. Her eyes welled up with tears as she looked around, trying to find the mystery benefactor. Keanu simply finished his coffee, left a generous tip, and walked out before she could realize it was him. This was not the first time Keanu had done something like this. Over the years, countless stories had surfaced. Him buying motorcycles for the stunt team on The Matrix, giving away millions of his earnings to crew members, or simply offering words of encouragement to strangers. He had become a legend not just on the big screen, but in real life too. That same evening, Keanu found himself walking through the quiet streets of the city, reflecting on the encounter. He had never been one for grand gestures or public recognition, but he had always believed that kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change lives. As he passed a small park, he noticed an elderly man struggling to fix his bicycle chain under a flickering streetlight. Without hesitation, Keanu approached and knelt down beside him. "Need a hand?" he asked. The old man looked up, surprised, and nodded. Within minutes, Keanu had fixed the chain, his hands covered in grease. "There you go, good as new," he said with a warm smile. The elderly man, grateful beyond words, chuckled. "You didn't have to do that, son. But thank you." Keanu simply nodded, patted him on the shoulder, and continued on his way. Later that night, the young waitress sat at home, staring at the check in disbelief. She would never know exactly who had helped her, but one thing was certain. There were still good people in the world, and among them, Keanu Reeves was quietly making a difference. One small act of kindness at a time. And so the legend of Keanu Reeves continued. Whether in a diner, on the streets, or among the people who least expected it, he remained Hollywood's most humble and genuine hero. A man who understood that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness held the greatest power.